Everything's up today. Everything's up today. A lot of optimism. As we look longer term out, what sector do you see being the biggest beneficiary of this pause?
Well, I think the tech software sector is going to be the biggest beneficiary of this pause. But look at these markets. These markets are as green as Dan's jacket. And that is just a welcome component to start off the week. But I think a lot of market participants and investors discounted the fact that we were going to get a China deal this quickly. We kind of saw the UK deal, and people thought that was just going to be a template, throw the market a bit of a bone to kind of keep them in place over the next couple of weeks. And now we may see more and more deals come faster, but the tech software, if you think about some of these names from Salesforce, Oracle, Palantir, ServiceNow, these are kind of underloved names because we're so focused on the Mag 7. But high tide lifts all boats. We're seeing NVIDIA up about 7.5%, seeing Tesla up 8%. You're going to see a short covering, rocking rally that's going to be green all day, just like that coat Dan has on.
The aforementioned danAi브스 right here with me in studio. So he picked out software. I want to ask you, we're talking about the Mag 7 and really mega cap tech. Who's the biggest beneficiary of this pause, at least in the near to medium term?
I mean, NVIDIA. Ultimately, if you look at this, I mean, they're going to be one, especially given the China tariffs that were, I think, most impacted. And, of course, we'll see what happens with the H20. But I agree with Jeff. I thought Jeff would actually be wearing a green jacket, too. If you look at the massive AI Palantir, you look at this AI revolution trade, you know, ServiceNow, Salesforce. Look, this, if you're a tech investor, this is a dream scenario. No one thought this weekend would yield results like this. And that's why I believe new highs for tech, new highs for the market, they're now on the table with what we saw happen this weekend.
By the way, we're also seeing a lot of big upside moves for companies like Dell, obviously, device makers and people like that source a lot of different components and things from China as well. They're getting a big boost. You mentioned Palantir, though. I do want to ask you, there was one part of the press conference that Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent mentioned is that this administration, while this trade deal is done, they're still focused on reducing federal spending and debt. Is that a concern for any tech companies in particular? Is that a concern for a Palantir that gets about half of its revenue from the government? Yeah,
I think it's actually a positive for names like Palantir, because I think as that happens, more and more of the software names, I could say that could be bullish for Oracle, could actually be bullish for Microsoft as well. But I think Palantir is actually one, it's the opposite. It's actually a beneficiary. Look, meritocracy, as that plays out, more and more goes to software. But you take a step back, as Jeff said, I mean, this is, if you're a bull today, it's going to be a great day.
All right. Jeff, I want to come back over to you. A different part of that press conference from the Treasury Secretary. He said he and his Chinese counterparts, they didn't talk about currency, but very important note, the dollar's up more than 1% this morning. We could see a rising dollar on the back of this. What does this mean for a lot of companies, especially S&P companies that do a lot of business overseas? Is that something you're going to watch as we go into earnings season? And by the way, we had a fantastic earnings season. What do you think all this means for Q2 earnings?
Well, currencies are always going to be a focus of ours, but at the end of the day, the U.S. dollar came down from that 110 level after we go back to November 5th, the election. So we've seen that depreciation of the dollar. So these smaller moves, I'm okay with, as long as we kind of stay tethered to par. What's fascinating is to see the market here has the ability to jump higher above this technical level, the S&P 500. And if you think about going into earnings seasons, we saw revisions. We looked for growth at 12.2%. They got revised down to 7.7%. As of now, with 90% of the S&P 500 already reporting, we are seeing over 13%. So we're going to see where it all comes in. But this was a better than expected. We saw a ton of buybacks. So there's a lot of euphoria. And I think if you are a bear right now and you haven't covered, you are going to get pushed into the hurt locker tape because we are now above the 200-day moving average, which we've focused on for quite some time. 57.50 was that level in the S&P 500. We're basically right now almost at the highs at 58.30. So this is going to be an interesting day to see if there's short covering, if there's sustainability, and maybe we get another deal, Dan.
Yeah, there is potential for another deal. I mean, Dan, before I get to you, Jeff, you actually gave us a pick for today. It was Boeing. Now, Boeing's had some back and forth when it comes to China. It was your pick before this trade deal was announced. What do you think this trade deal means for Boeing?
I wrote about Boeing on Friday in my Options Pro article I put out weekly, Frank, but it's interesting. This is an essential name. This is a buy what you need name. We're seeing orders come in. They have a great backlog, but you're absolutely right. The chart has been pretty sideways and it hasn't really recovered. It was trading up above 300 pre-COVID. So I think you're going to see Boeing get its groove back. You're going to see demand. You're going to see global demand come back in. And I think it has the ability. It's over $200, $201 right now in the pre-market. And I think you'll see it go back up to $250 where it belongs.
Yeah, we saw some headlines a few weeks ago that China was actually sending some Boeing planes back, but you would imagine this would be overall good for that stock. Dan, I want to come back over to you. We actually had you on initially to talk cybersecurity. You gave us some top picks in that space. Are cybersecurity stocks impacted by this trade deal? Are there other parts of the tech landscape that you see as potentially impacted? You also cover EVs. It's very important to note Tesla getting a big boost from this news.
It's a golden age for cybersecurity. I think what Jeff hit on too, when it comes to the software side, as a second, third derivative beneficiary of AI, this is bullish. I mean, you look at names like Palo Alto, CrowdStrike, Zscaler, CyberArk. I think even names like Checkpoint. And I think it speaks to what we're seeing in terms of tech. In terms of EV for Tesla, you talk about NVIDIA being, what I believe one of the biggest beneficiaries from this. Tesla's going to be a huge beneficiary in terms of what we see on this de-escalation of the U.S.-China, tariffs. And look, I think Tesla's won. A lot of those dark days are now in the rearview mirror.
One thing we have to ask you about is Microsoft and OpenAI. Some new announcements about the deal between them and the effort to turn this into a for-profit company. Very quickly, your take?
I think that's a smart move. I think Nadella is going to ultimately, he's playing this exactly like you want to see it. And I think that's going to continue to be a huge partnership for Microsoft. It's our view, Redmond as a stock, that could have a 5 in front of it.